Oh no, I have cut this board too short. What a waste of valuable lumber. My project is in ruins, and so is my fragile self-esteem. If only there were a way to make this wood longer once more. Hello everyone, my name is Nicoya, and this is... Hello everyone, my name is Nicoya, and this is a finger joint bit. It fits in a router and it cuts finger joints. Who would have known? Now, there's a lot of videos on the net, well, not a lot of them, but a couple videos on the net on how to use these things, and all those videos are terrible. I don't know what people are doing. So I'm going to make a video on how to use these, and we are going to do it the right way, I hope. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do it. Whatever works, works, but there's a good way and there's like silly ways to use these. So I'm going to try to show you the good way, and so we're going to do that. First step, get this as a router. So, as you can see, I got a fence set up here. This is going to be kind of critical for making an accurate cut. This one does come with a bearing, but for a 2x4 piece, it's a little bit short once we get the blade actually set up to the correct level. So it ends up basically riding like right off the edge of the board. If you do have a thicker board, like you're using some 8/4 or something, then maybe it'll be useful. But for us, we're just basically going to ignore it and use the fence. Now, in order to set up the fence here, what we want to do is we want to have the bit dropped right down so we can actually get at a flat part of it, make it look easy to see. And I can see right now that we have a fair bit of a gap between the fence and the lower part of the bit. So I am going to loosen up my fence and get this going the right way. Line it up so that the fence is exactly in line with... There we go. We're just kissing it exactly in line with the lower part of the cutters here. So let's tighten back up, double check it. Looks good. Remember to have your router unplugged when you're doing this, of course. And we're good to go. So you can kind of see that'll be lined up like that. The cutters are nice and exposed, and now we need to raise this up to the correct level. Now, getting the bit set to the correct level is one of the places where the other videos I've seen kind of get a little bit weird and not very good. The idea is that to make these cuts efficiently, we want to be able to do one setup on the router, cut all our ends, and then what will happen is when we bring the two ends together, I mean, if we're cutting them exactly the same face up, then, we're going to have a bunch of pins poking against a bunch of pins, and the holes are going to line up and it's not going to work. What we want to do is want to cut it so that when we flip one of these boards over, the holes line up with the pins and the pins line up with the holes. And what that means is that we need to align one of the features on this bit. I'll show you which one in a second. One of these features on the bit has to line up exactly with the center of the board, because when we flip the board over, everything on the board changes except for the center line. The center line is always in the same place whether we're face up or face down. So, first thing we do is figure out where the center is, and that starts with figuring out how thick this board is. This is a 2x4, so it's obviously going to be exactly 1.5 inches. It is 1/64 over 1 9/16. So yeah, a little bit over 1.5 inches, which I find is happening a lot. Like, usually you think of a 2x4, I mean obviously not 2 inches because they smooth it. Usually you think of it as 1.5 inches, but it's larger than that. So anyways, that's going to be a 1/16 over 1.5 inches roughly. So we're going to go a 32nd over 3/4. So we'll dial that back, go a 32nd over 3/4. We'll put in the half of a 1/64 in there. Why not? Who cares? So tighten that down, and hopefully that's not too blown out. You can kind of see it, maybe. I don't know. Anyways, we are going to mark the halfway point on this board. Like that, verify it, perfect. So, let's see, can you actually see that? I have no idea. Okay, grab a pencil, be right back. Alright, so as you can hopefully see, there's a line there. And we're on our halfway measurement, and that lines up exactly with the line that way. And if we flip that over, should line up exactly with the line that way. I think you can see that. Now that we have our center line marked, we can put our calipers away. And I want to emphasize, it is kind of important that you get this exactly right, because any error you make in the center line is going to be doubled when you flip the board over. Because you're going to have the bit off by, like, let's say a 32nd this way. That means that, the pins, once we flip them over, are going to be a 32nd this way on one board, a 32nd this way on the other board. Now you're at a 16th, and that's kind of sucky. So I'm going to bring you around a little bit and show you how to line up the bit. All right, I think we should be able to see this. So let me grab a pencil, point at things. So this particular finger joint blade has 4 slot cutters, and you end up with essentially, 3 pins and 2 half pins. What we want to do is we want to take this slope here. This slope is what we want to line up with the exact center of the board. That'll give us 2 slots here, 2 pins here, and then in a separate operation we will shave off the little bit of remainder on the bottom here. We take a board, we can line it up, and we can see that we're going to have a little bit extra there. And actually that's very close to lined up already. That's actually kind of cool. That'll save me a little bit of time. But I'm going to tweak the fine adjust here and get this lined up exactly. Because as I said, if you get this off a little bit, and we're actually, the bit is a little bit high. So you can see, you dial it up, you dial it down. You want to get it just splitting the slope of that. The slope of the edge of the cutter. So I'm going to say, this board is a little bit warped, so it's kind of hard to exactly get it, but I'm going to say we are like right on the money there. Start clamping that down, and now we can get this board clamped to our work surface and make a cut. And, see if I lose any fingers. Safety glasses. I set up this vacuum hose, and it would be really useful if I turned the vacuum on, perhaps. Okay, that's cut number 1, and doesn't look half bad. Little bit of blowout on the back here, but if you put a actual sacrificial board there, you'll do just fine. So the actual cut quality is pretty damn nice. Like, I have to say, that looks beautiful for like the $2 of wood this is. As much as I hate dimensional lumber, it's like every time I use it, it's like, this actually is not that bad. I mean, it is bad, but not as bad as I think it is. Anyway, I'm going to cut the other half of this, and then we'll set up for the next cut, which is to get rid of that piece there so that when we flip it over, the pegs can actually get into the holes, because we have this part on this side which would otherwise run into it. So let's do that. I'm not going to figure that. It looks exactly the same. And board number 2 is cut. So I don't know that setting up the vacuum to try to suck up the dust from this did any good, as much as I hoped it would, because routers blow dust everywhere. But, I tried. Anyway, we are going to set up for cut number 2, which again is going to get rid of that piece, because as I was saying, we're going to get it set up for cut number 2, because as it is, if we bring these 2 boards together, try and get this on the screen so you can see it. If we bring these boards together, we can see that the pegs line up with the slots, but the little bits at the ends are blocking us from going all the way through. So we'll just get a straight cutting bit, knock those off, and we'll be done. And if you had a bunch of these to go through, obviously, you would do all these cuts first on, like, you know, half a dozen boards or whatever, then change your setup, buzz off the little end bit on the same boards again, and you'd have 2 setups and you're done. You don't have to, you know, try to line the things back up or anything like that. Like, there's so many things that people make more trouble for themselves that they don't need to, and we're just going to do it the simple way. So, I'm going to grab my bit, get it in here, make sure it's unplugged so I don't have to take my fingers off when I'm changing the bit. It's one of those days. Okay, we have now a 3/4 straight cutting bit in there, which you probably can't really see, but trust me, it's in there. And actually, I can zoom you in, can't I? One moment. Yeah, that's a little better. Yeah, anyway, 3/4 bit in there, and you're going to take one of our boards, and be careful not to knock the router off the table. And we're going to line it up so that we have our upside facing up, and you're going to need to lift the blade a little bit. That's the longer one. I'll grab the shorter one. Make my life a little bit easier. Alright. Yeah, that's a lot easier to hold. Okay, so we are going to try to knock the rotor off again. We bring that up until we are, you know, let's say halfway through the slot, basically. Doesn't really matter that much. All we want to make sure is that we completely clear off this part of the wood, and we're going to be cutting right down to the bottom of that slot. So, you know, as long as we don't cut into the next tab, you know, we're good. So that looks good to me. Now we're going to set up the fence. And as you can see, this is going to be too deep, and I mean, I could actually measure this, but you know, why? And I can just wing it. Like that. That looks perfect. If you're off by a little bit, you'll just end up with like a tiny bit of a gap when you glue it together, and you're probably going to end up with a gap anyway, so, you know, just deal with it. If you actually do want to measure it though, you know, you can either go to the bit with your calipers and say, hey, you know, how deep is that? That's going to be, yeah, let's say exactly 5/16. Focus, yes, 5/16. Right way up. So you can measure and say like, hey, I'm 5/16 away, and you know, that's cool, but do what you do. So now we take the board with the small side up again, and if you're running this on a router table, makes it really easy if you always do the small side up, because that way you're always running it like the same way. You don't have to like flip your pieces over and try and remember and whatever. You just do what you do. Anyways, I'm going to quickly buzz these using the fence and the handheld rotor because that's what I have, and yeah, I'll video one of them, I guess. Alright, that cut went a lot deeper than it was supposed to, and I learned that I'm terrible at eyeballing things. So this time, I'm going to set up the fence by measuring. So, as I said, we want to go 5/16 on the depth. Make sure that's right on the button, because that is the length of our teeth or the depth of our slots. And I don't know, I went further than 5/16. But, you know, this is just a piece of scrap I'm demoing on, so luckily it doesn't actually matter. And if I had more patience, I'd chop this off and redo it, because we're making this board longer anyway, so it doesn't matter if it's like 5/16 less than it should be. So, to set this up properly, we're going to hopefully not drop the rotor on the floor this time. And do this the right way. So, this style of fence has a fine adjust, which I should have been using. And what we're going to do, we're going to loosen this up, dial it forward until we are flush. And this is where having 1, 2, 3 blocks around is really nice. So they're flush right there. Now, I'm going to actually go around so we can see where our marker is. And there we go. So, you see that? Sort of? Anyways, this is our marker here. We're going to hold that steady, turn this around so it says 0. And now we're going to try and remember which way this fence goes. I can never remember that. So I think if we dial it up, it goes out, which means I'm already at the end of the screw, which kind of sucks. Let me reset this a moment. Okay, we're back to flush and we're zeroed out again. Hopefully you can see the 0 there. Probably not, but whatever. Anyways, we want to dial this so the fence is coming up. So that means we are going to go this way. Yes, okay. So that is going to be 1/64, 3/32, 3/64, and 1/16. And then at a 5 start. That's going to be like 5/64 there, isn't it? Or yeah, 5 start per inch or something. That's slightly annoying. This one is 4. Yeah, this one's finer than that one. I'm gonna have to calculate this head now. All right, so this is gonna be 5/64. 5/64 of this. God damn it.
Hey everyone, Future Nico here. I want to come back and try to explain what I was saying in that last clip about this very weird lead screw. So I figured it'd help to show the actual markings on here a little more up close. So you start at 0, 1/64, 1/32, 2/64, whatever, 3/64, 1/16, 4/64, and then like 5/64. Like, who divides a lead screw into 5/64? Like, that doesn't even make sense. That's not an imperial thread even. Like, you can't divide 64 by 5 and get an even number, and in this size of thread you always have an even number of threads per inch in the inch system of threads. And so I thought to myself, well, that's kind of close to 5/65, and so maybe that is a 13 pitch screw pitch, and it's kinda almost a 13 but not quite. And then of course I look at this again and I realize the secondary markings are for 0.5 millimeter, 1 millimeter, 1.5 millimeters, and 2 millimeters, which means that this is actually a metric lead screw with a 2 millimeter pitch. So trying to dial in a distance of any accuracy really, because I mean 5/64 is not 2 millimeters, it's like 1.984 whatever. Sure, that doesn't really matter in woodworking, but if you're trying to dial in like half the length of this lead screw, this is like, I don't know, whatever a metric 1.5 inches is going to be, maybe even a little bit more than that. You're going to build up that error and you're going to end up off a ways. And so really the simple way to do it is just to ignore the markings on here, or just convert to metric your measurement and measure it by how many millimeters you go around, or measure it directly against the bit, which is always going to get you a slightly more accurate measurement, because you're measuring where the fence actually is versus just where this lead screw thinks it's pushing the fence to. So yeah, that's hopefully explaining that.
Okay, we're going to do this the other way. 5/16 is 1 inch minus 11/16. So set our calipers to 11/16, measure back to the bit from the fence, plus a 1, 2, 3 block in the 1 inch mode, and that is going to be 11/16 there, which means that if we put this here and adjust this back to 5/16, we should be spot on. Finally, now we can make the cut. And yeah, don't be me. Do this like right the first time. Alright, my measurement was good that time, but my technique left a little bit to be desired. I kind of went off the end of the fence a little bit and dipped in, but You know, if you're a little less impatient than me, you should be fine. I clearly need some practice. Anyway, now for the moment of truth. Try not to knock the router on the floor. Take our two pieces and oh yes, they fit beautifully together. Except for the gap where I fucked up the second cut, but you'll do better than I did. Ooh, magic. So, after a little precision, we have a pretty tight joint, other than the part where I messed up the fence. But, well, and I messed up the cut. But other than that, it looks pretty good. You stick some glue in there, and this will become one board again. You can see the other side, a little bit shy on there, but whatever. Once the glue's in there, you'll never notice it. So, our board is now longer again, and here's a secret. I was just cutting out a knot hole because this knot hole is useless. Now I have a longer board without a knot in it, and that's pretty cool. So, get some glue on that. Don't even need to clamp it up really. This will stick together on its own, and you're good to go. So hope you enjoyed that video, and I'll see you on the next one.